The former president is expected in Tuesday in Miami. Scripps News will be on the ground following the developments and bringing you just the facts. Be sure to stay with us. And while we learned a lot in the past few hours, there is still plenty of lingering legal questions tonight. Here to help shed some clarity is Jamie White. He's a trial attorney. Jamie, we appreciate you being here. I want to pull up a post from the former president on Truth Social. He claimed in a post today that, quote, under the Presidential Records Act, I'm allowed to do all of this. Clearly, the Justice Department thinks otherwise. What does the Presidential Records Act say former presidents can and cannot hold on to?
So, that's a great question. I do think this will be a centerpiece for some of the arguments that happened in this case. The Presidential Records Act was passed by President Carter, and this was in the afterstorm of Watergate. What it says is that records need to be kept intact, and they need to be declassified in an appropriate way. And President Trump did not do any of this. In fact, what we saw was an attempt or a deliberate attempt to not comply with this particular act. So this will be a key focus of this. But what I would suggest to you is that it's not the most important focus. I think Mr. Trump's problems really deal with the issues associated with the private documents or confidential documents that were associated with the Iran matters and other national security matters. This is where I think he's going to have real problems. I think that other presidents have not complied with the Presidential Act, for reasons that I think are just logistical, but his issues are really important associated with Iran, Russia, and some of the other documents that publicly are reported to be at issue.
31 of the 37 counts the former president faces are willful retention of records. I'm not an attorney, but I've been trying to figure all this out. These are part of a century-old law called the Espionage Act. This has mostly been used against accused spies and leakers in the past. What specifically is the president accused of to face these kinds of charges?
So, based on the indictment, it appears that the president is being accused of intentionally holding documents that could potentially hurt the national security of the United States. We saw this in the 1950s, and I don't want to suggest that this president should be harmed in any way, shape, or form, but we've seen people executed and certainly put away for their life for similar allegations. I'm not suggesting that that's the case here, but we've seen that, and that is where we are today. And so Jack Smith, I think, has done an incredible job. And while we have some details of the indictment, the testimony and the evidence is going to speak for itself. If Donald Trump, in fact, used these documents to make money or for, God forbid, other reasons, nefarious reasons, this could go very, very south for him.
I want to jump in here. You were quoted earlier in the week as saying prosecutors must consider the wider issues when deciding whether to file federal charges against a former president. He's facing 37 felony counts. Do you think the wider issues, as you put it, were considered here?
Well, I think, I think it's too early to say, but I do think that I'm no personal fan of Donald Trump, and his opinions, but I do believe in democracy, and I do think that Jack Smith and I presume Garlic Marland have cued in to some extent to analyze what are the huge practical issues here, and I just find it very, very difficult to believe that was not part of this conversation. For them to come up with 37 counts, I do believe these prosecutors were deliberate. I do believe that they're nonpartisan, and I do believe that they put thought into this. For them to come up with 37 counts, to answer your question, I think they did. But I do think that it's important. I do think it's important that as a country that we take a careful look at this before people get above themselves.
Right. Yeah. Trial attorney Jamie White, we appreciate your insight tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. It's great to have. Great. Thanks for having me.